My husband and I have been living together for 10 years. There was one child. The relationship seemed to be good. But deep down, I knew they weren't perfect. I wanted at least a little romance, courtship from my husband. But it didn't happen. My husband was still a little cold-blooded, didn't pay me enough attention. He treated me not as a beloved wife, but as a housewife. I didn't know what to do to get him to start paying attention to me, apart from the daily duty words. There were shouts, complaints, curses, and even silence. Sometimes silence is more than shouting. I knew I wasn't perfect either. Of course, he would like a 160/90/160 woman. I wasn't like that. And soon, I decided to take a desperate step, a terrible step. So, I decided to address my feelings and try to change the situation. I understood that first of all I need to sort out my desires and needs. Perhaps I put up with the fact that my husband did not pay enough attention for a long time, hoping that everything would work out by itself. But now I realized that I had to do something. I started to work on myself. I joined the gym, started to monitor my diet and devote time to hobbies that brought me joy. I wanted not only to convince my husband that I was attractive, but also to feel more confident and happy myself. At the same time, I decided that I needed to talk openly with him about my feelings. I chose the right time so as not to provoke a scandal and told about my feelings. I talked about how I felt invisible, as if my role in life had been reduced to household duties. I hoped that he would understand. To my surprise, he listened to me. He was a little wary at first, but then he started sharing his thoughts. We discussed our expectations and what we both wanted from the relationship. I realized that he was also stressed and tired, but didn't know how to express his feelings. After our conversation, I noticed a slight change. He began to offer to spend time together, candlelit dinners, walks, indulgences in the form of compliments. It gave me hope, but I knew it was just the beginning. We started working on our relationship together, taking steps towards each other. But there were still challenges ahead. Sometimes I still had thoughts that he wanted the perfect woman, and that I wasn't good enough. I've learned to deal with these thoughts by telling myself that the most important thing is our feelings and relationships, not our perfect. Now I was at a crossroads, to continue working on myself and our relationship, or to take a desperate step to change everything radically. And at that moment I realized that the best solution is to stay close to him, and continue to develop, to walk this path together. Next, I will talk about the new challenges that we had to face, and how we learned to understand each other better. Our relationship was on the brink, but we weren't going to give up. It would seem that the relationship began to improve. Soon the day the operation came, my husband was by my side, and a few days after the operation, I saw a great result. My husband was delighted with my new breasts. We were happy. For the first 2 months after the operation, we were together every day. He was in a hurry to get home just to see me. As a woman, I was very happy. He only saw me. However, as is often the case, I'm in pain this morning that alerted me. It was completely different from the usual sensations that one would expect after surgery and a few days of recovery. I touched my chest lightly, feeling a little anxious. Perhaps it was just the effects of physical activity or a change of position during sleep, but the feeling of anxiety did not leave me. I decided not to panic, and first of all, to discuss this with my husband. After such an eventful night, I wanted to share both joyful and disturbing moments with him. "Listen, I need to talk to you," I began cautiously as we were having breakfast. He looked at me with interest, and I felt that this was the right time for a frank conversation. "I woke up this morning with an unpleasant pain in my chest. It bothers me." He frowned, and I noticed how his face changed, as if he remembered something important. "You should have told me right away. Maybe you need to see a doctor," he replied. This concern of his calmed me down a little. I understood that taking care of each other was an important part of our relationship, and his reaction indicated that he still supported me. We decided together that I would make an appointment with a doctor to clarify the situation. On the one hand, I hoped that everything would not be so serious and it was just a temporary feeling. But on the other hand, I was tormented by thoughts that this might be a signal that I needed to reconsider my attitude to my health and general condition. We must always remember that physical well-being is linked to emotional comfort, and I was ready to take steps to restore both sides. Further, that I had serious complications. In the process of recovering from surgery, I developed seroma, which led to fluid accumulation in the chest area. The doctor explained that this could happen as a result of surgery, but in my case, the situation required intervention. I felt a chill in my chest. I was full of anxiety and uncertainty about what awaits me next. What should I do now? I asked the doctor, trying to remain calm, although emotions were raging inside me. The doctor explained that it would most likely require drainage to remove excess fluid and possibly an additional procedure to fix the problem. We discussed possible risks and ways to minimize the consequences. I could feel his every word getting heavier and heavier, and it was difficult for me to take in all the information. When I left the office, I was overcome by a feeling of panic. I quickly realized that these complications could affect not only my physical condition, but also my relationship with my husband. I was worried that everything would change, and that the excitement about a new breast might fade quickly. In this difficult moment, I realized that I needed to turn to my husband for support. I wanted him to know what was going on, so that we could get through this together. I called him, and when he came home, I was ready to share everything I had learned. "I need to tell you that I had problems after the operation," I began, feeling my excitement grow. I hoped that his reaction would be supportive, and that together we could overcome all the difficulties that we face. This was one of the most difficult decisions I've ever had to make. I felt like every cell in my body was filled with anxiety and fear. The removal of the implants meant that I would return to my previous state, and this caused me mixed feelings. On the one hand, I knew that it was necessary for my health. On the other, I was worried that I might lose what I had wanted for so long. I decided to share my decision with my husband. That evening, when I returned home, I took a deep breath and sat down next to him. "Darling, I need to talk to you about what happened at the doctor's," I began with an anxious voice. I told him that I was recommended to have my implants removed, and how I made the decision to do it for the sake of my health. I saw support and understanding in his eyes, but at the same time, concern. "I understand that it's hard. But for any person, health comes first. We'll get through this together," he said, hugging me. This warmth of his words helped to calm me down a little. Every day, as I approached the date of the operation, I felt an increasingly strong combination of excitement and fear. I understood that although this decision was necessary for my health, it also had to affect me emotionally and psychologically. I knew that I had to work a lot on myself to get into a state of inner peace. After the surgery, I understood that the recovery process would also be long and complicated, but I needed to be strong. I decided to prepare in advance for the changes and realize that, regardless of the result, I am not alone. I knew that I could count on my husband, and it gave me strength. Now, not only the physical aspect was important to me, but also the emotional support that we could provide to each other. Soon after the removal of the implants in my chest, I felt a chill from my husband. He came late, left early. I began to suspect him of cheating. These thoughts did not leave me, and although I tried to be rational, my feelings could not overshadow my fears. I was going through incredible stress, and the physical and emotional recovery was making itself felt. Every time he stayed late at work or left early, I felt my heart tighten with anxiety. I turned to my friends for support, trying to sort out my feelings. They told me that sometimes a difficult period comes in a relationship, and it's normal to experience such emotions. But there was still a worm of doubt inside me. One evening, when he came home late again, I couldn't resist and decided to talk to him. "You've changed something, and I can't ignore it. It's hard for me, and I feel that the distance between us is growing," I said, trying to speak calmly, although everything was boiling inside. He looked at me in surprise, then his eyes filled with sadness. "I do not know how to explain it. I'm just going through this period with you, and it's hard for me to see you suffer. There was more work, and I tried to provide us with the best, but I never wanted to move away from you." He admitted his words shocked me. I expected to hear something different, but instead I found out that his behavior was caused by anxiety and stress. I realized that my suspicions were unfounded, and this became a lesson for me about how easy it is to misinterpret the actions of loved ones, especially in difficult times.